Here's a bitter truth the commercial spirituality industry tries to keep from you. Most of what you've been told to do to raise your frequency, cleansing crystals, burning rosemary, forcing positive thoughts, often turns into a polished form of avoidance. Carl Jung, one of the great pioneers of depth psychology, spent his life showing something very different. Real growth in awareness, real elevation in your inner state, comes from dismantling negative psychological patterns, not from piling on surface-level sacred rituals. Your original frequency already runs high. It's been buried under defense mechanisms, social masks, and wounds that never fully healed. If you've tried as hard as you can, and life still feels unstable, the problem may not be that you're missing something. The problem may be that you haven't dared to let something go. Do you have the courage to let your old self die, so your most honest and most sacred self finally has a chance to be born? In today's video, we'll go deep into 5 things Jung insisted you must throw away to resonate at a higher frequency truly. You'll see why each one feels harder to release than you expect, how holding on keeps you trapped in low-frequency consciousness, and what becomes possible when you finally let go. Stay until the end, because that's the only place you'll find your real light. First, let go of the good person performance. Low-vibration energy drains have been quietly threading themselves through your life without you even noticing. It shows up on the nights you collapse into bed, wipe off your makeup, peel off the put-together outfit, and suddenly realize you just lived through another long day designed to keep everyone else comfortable. It shows up when your chat window still holds the messages you just sent. "It's okay, I get it. Don't worry, I'll handle it," topped off with cheerful emojis. But on your side of the screen, your chest feels tight with resentment and a nameless anger you don't know what to do with. In the rush of modern life, where people size each other up through polished smiles and smooth, agreeable manners, we slowly learn to hide our rougher edges and present the most acceptable version of ourselves. Jung called that exhausting layer the persona, the mask. It works like a natural defense, an unspoken contract you sign with the outside world in exchange for approval and protection from rejection. You start believing you have to be easygoing, the diligent employee, the selfless friend, the understanding partner. Wear that mask long enough, and your mind slips into an illusion. You begin to trust completely that the role is you. One of the most common signs of clinging to the good person mask shows up when you ignore your own boundaries because you've convinced yourself that a highly conscious person should always be understanding and selfless. You run yourself dry just to look useful in everyone's eyes. You become a people pleaser, tying your worth to praise and other people's opinions. You apologize constantly, even when you did nothing wrong. You nod along, even when you don't actually agree. Some people who get stuck in spiritual concepts go a step further and clamp down on their anger because they believe if you're spiritual, you're not allowed to get mad. But dismissing emotions that are rising right now is just the mind using reason to trick itself. Your vibration can't lie. It still drops hard because those feelings never disappeared. They sink into the shadow part of the psyche, and they wait until they return in a way that's even more ruthless. The reason you have to let go of the good person role is simple. The roots of forced niceness don't come from natural kindness or a full, generous heart. They grow out of primal fear, fear of being abandoned, fear of being judged, fear that you aren't worthy of love. When you do good just to protect a polished image in the crowd's eyes, your consciousness is running on the lowest survival setting. The energy behind those actions, even when it hides under the costume of sacrifice, still feels thick with anxiety and pressure. Spending your life force guarding a fragile mask means you're stripping yourself of the chance to touch the wholeness of your own soul. Stepping into a higher level of awareness asks for a brave kind of shedding. Instead of working so hard to maintain the image of a spotless saint, Jung's work points you toward integrating the shadow. This process invites you to turn the light toward your darkest corners, to admit the selfish part, the buried rage, and to give those parts permission to breathe. Being real doesn't excuse careless behavior or harming other people. It means reclaiming solid inner sovereignty. A real person can hold deep compassion and still draw a sword to protect their boundaries. They give freely from what's good in them, and they stay firm when they need to say no to unreasonable demands. This kind of freedom only shows up when you're willing to disappoint people, to walk calmly through judgment without your inner world cracking or getting swallowed by shame. To see the power of dropping the good person performance and the way it can ignite your personal energy, look at Elle Woods' journey in the American film Legally Blonde. Elle starts out as a bright, vivid girl, obsessed with fashion, sensitive, and in love with pink. But because she wants to prove her worth to an ex-boyfriend, she pushes herself to get into Harvard Law, a conservative academic world where serious intelligence gets measured in dull gray suits and ice-cold faces. The moment she steps into that world, Elle falls into the trap most of us know too well. She tries to sand herself down to fit the crowd's expectations. She puts away the bold outfits, pulls on dark, lifeless clothes, and forces herself to play the part of the serious, proper student. She aches for validation, working hard to become the good girl who follows every rule in that dry, rigid academic system. And what happens next? Ella's energy drops fast. She fades out. She struggles. She grows shaky and small, and she comes close to getting kicked out. The real magic only kicks in the moment Elle decides to say no. She drops the performance of being the right fit and walks into the make-or-break trial as her original self, bright, confident, fully alive. She even turns her knowledge of beauty and hair care, the very thing the academic crowd mocked, into her sharpest weapon, flips the entire case, and wins. The second Elle stops trying to blend in, her vibration changes completely. She no longer moves like a scared victim waiting for judgment. She becomes a powerful force field that pulls every eye in the room. Truth always carries a higher frequency than forced niceness. When the good person act ends, life energy starts moving again on its own, guiding you back to the path of real inner steadiness. And yet, the moment you take off that mask, another psychological trap can appear, one that's especially skilled at targeting people with tender feeling hearts. Second, take off the hero cape, the trap of being addicted to feeling needed. For a lot of people raised on modern fairy tales, the greatest picture of love always seems tied to total, exhausting devotion. The classic children's book, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, admired across generations, might be the clearest proof of that belief. A tree gives shade, sweet fruit, branches and leaves, and then gives its own trunk to be cut into a boat for the boy it loves, until nothing remains but a bare stump, rotting and alone. People often praise that story as a symbol of selflessness and unconditional love. But when you look deeper at the worn-out emptiness left behind after all that sacrifice, you can see the tragedy of erosion. The giver gets stripped of life force, and the receiver loses the ability to stand on their own and grow up. Do you see yourself in that apple tree's shadow? You're always the safe place to land, the emergency number people call at any hour when their life falls apart. You listen, you organize, you carry problems that were never yours, with a kind of enthusiasm that seems endless. But when the call ends, when those people return to their steady lives, you get left behind in a silent room with an emptiness so thick you can barely breathe. Exhaustion rises up, mixed with hurt, because you realize almost no one has the patience to ask whether you're okay. You drain yourself to hold the world. Then you sit alone inside your own darkness. Jung called this pattern the archetype of the wounded healer. He exposes a brutal truth. The intense drive to save others rarely comes from pure compassion. It often grows out of the helper's own bleeding inner wounds. Constantly bandaging other people becomes a desperate attempt to distract yourself from your own pain, and a way to feed an ego that's starving for a sense of worth. When you break down the everyday behaviors, you'll see the hero cape works like a trap that keeps you confined. You start getting hooked on the feeling of being needed. Your sense of value gets tied to other people's dependence. Without realizing it, you surround yourself with people who never seem able to stand on their own. Cling to this identity long enough, and it gets so dangerous that helping turns into a form of control. You offer advice nobody asked for. You step into problems that don't belong to you. Recently, a story sparked a lot of debate online about a wife who kept defending her addicted husband, taking on every responsibility, and paying off the crushing debts he racked up. She believed she was saving her family, but as many people pushed back, she was taking away the one chance he had to face consequences and hit the bottom where awakening can begin. Through a Jungian lens, forced help and over-involvement in someone else's process becomes a kind of violence, carefully disguised as kindness. It doesn't serve the receiver's freedom. It feeds the giver's ego, the part that secretly craves power. To really let go of the hero cape, you need a clean line between compassion and codependency. Real compassion lets you feel someone's pain without the urge to rush in and fix it, because you understand every soul has to walk through its own lesson. Codependency does the opposite. It panics in the face of another person's pain, then pushes you to intervene just to calm your own anxiety. The ego runs that game through psychological manipulation, using someone else's weakness to secure your position. The way out of this stuck, low-frequency pattern requires the courage to take off the savior identity. Few releases feel this hard, because it asks you to watch someone you love struggle through the storm without jumping in to shield them. The first practice, and the deepest one, is learning to step back and observe. When someone brings you a hopeless story, instead of pouring out a dozen solutions or offering to carry it for them, try simply showing up and saying, "That sounds really hard. How are you feeling?" Offer full listening, without judgment, without interference. Giving the other person their right to choose their own life doesn't make you cold or selfish. It shows the highest respect for a human being's capacity to heal. The highest frequency of love doesn't mean carrying someone else's life on your shoulders. Sometimes the most loving, compassionate, and powerful thing you can do is take one step back so the other person stays free to walk, stumble, and grow on their own 2 feet. Once you clear the entanglement with other people's lives and let the hero cape fall to the ground, you'll face something even more intense, rising from the deepest place inside you. Third, stop explaining yourself. Let go of the hunger to be understood. The need to explain yourself can feel like a natural reflex, especially in a culture that prizes clear communication. But through a psychoanalytic lens, constantly unpacking every thought, justifying every emotion, and defending every personal choice becomes the clearest echo of an inner world with cracks in it. It reveals a deep lack of self-trust. Every time you work to persuade someone to nod along with your pain or your decisions, you quietly hand them the key to your happiness. You give away your inner authority, turning your existence and your reasonableness into a fragile draft waiting for the outside world to approve it. Late at night, So many people sit alone in front of their phone screen, carefully rewriting a long message that reads like an essay. They weigh every sentence, trying to choose the smoothest, most logical words to explain to a friend, a partner, or a family member why they made a decision or why something hurt them so deeply. They spend a full 30 minutes, sometimes an entire evening, just laying their heart out. Then a detached reply comes back, a confused frown, or a cold dismissal, and their chest tightens. A heavy mix of resentment, helplessness, and invisibility closes in on their mind. So they try again, desperate, swapping vocabulary, hunting for a different angle to plead their case, holding onto a thin hope that on the nth explanation, the other person will finally nod and feel you. When every attempt sinks into silence, a deeply toxic psychological mechanism kicks on. They start doubting themselves. Modern consciousness often gets raised in a world built around consensus reality, where something counts as true mainly because the crowd agrees. Standing alone while nobody validates you, the mind starts whispering suspicion. Have you ever spiraled into questioning whether you're overreacting, whether your feelings got distorted, or worse, whether you're completely in the wrong? The craving for someone to confirm your emotions can turn you into a prisoner inside your own mind, where your personal reality loses its value simply because it doesn't carry the outside world stamp of approval. Shift the perspective a bit, and you'll notice a massive mental barrier. We often assume language can fully carry an experience from one person to another. Reality works the opposite way. Your inner life weaves together tens of thousands of memories, unconscious wounds, subtle vibrations, and a one-of-a-kind lens that no other person on earth can copy. Expecting someone with a completely different psychological genetic code to grasp the full landscape of your soul becomes an unreasonable expectation and a form of spiritual self-harm. Jung believed the peak of the awakening journey lies in building unshakable inner authority. A psyche operating at a higher frequency gives off a quiet steadiness of its own, fully immune to the need for outside validation. To reach that place, you have to accept one silent truth with courage. Most people will never truly understand you. Their disagreement often comes down to something simple. They don't share the same level of awareness, and they haven't walked through the storms you've survived. When someone accidentally or deliberately twists your intentions, a high-frequency inner world responds with a kind of silence that almost shocks you. This silence holds no trace of submission or weakness. It stands as the highest form of self-mastery. You can smile, let the misunderstanding exist like a gray cloud passing through the sky, and keep walking your path without feeling any urge to turn back and explain yourself. Sit with the powerful symbol of Jesus standing before Pilate's judgment, surrounded by sharp accusations, surrounded by a crowd hungry to condemn. He chooses absolute silence. He understands the roots of what's happening. He knows the truth he carries, and he knows any explanation would dissolve in front of hearts already closed. That silence carries unmatched inner power, a profound witness to the ability to hold your own reality, even while the world around you judges. In everyday life, this practice of letting go starts in the smallest moments. Next time you make a hard decision, turn down an invitation, or protect a boundary and run into judgment, take a slow, deep breath. Notice the flare inside you that wants to jump in and explain, then calmly put it out. Hold the prickly discomfort of being misunderstood. Let the feeling move through you without fighting back. When you can stay steady in the middle of other people's opinions, with an inner world as smooth as a foggy, still lake, you've officially broken the outside world's chains. This path asks for extreme steadiness, but the reward is a wide-open space of freedom, because in the end, one unchanging truth will keep lighting the way. You don't owe the whole world an explanation. You only owe yourself understanding. Fourth, kill the potential illusion you keep holding for other people. Once you've taken back the key to your happiness from other people's hands and learned how to stay quiet in the face of judgment, you may still notice another invisible rope draining your energy. You've stopped explaining yourself, but have you been spending your whole youth explaining away the harm other people cause you? Time to face one of the mind's most subtle and painful defense mechanisms, the habit of clinging to someone else's potential illusion. A quiet tragedy plays out in countless modern homes, where intelligent, sensitive, deeply loving people lock themselves inside relationships that wear them down. The reason isn't blindness or weakness. They fell in love with a ghost from the future. You look at the emotionally absent man or the manipulative woman in front of you, yet your mind refuses to take in that cold reality. Your mind automatically paints a beautiful portrait of who they could become, how warm and whole they would be if they would face their hidden corners, if they would finally heal. The brutal truth: you don't love the real person standing right there. You're holding a project, a potential self you stitched together from hope. To strip away this illusion, Jung used one of the most foundational ideas in depth psychology: projection. Jung points out that much of what we believe we see in other people actually mirrors our own inner world. When you see bright potential hiding under someone's roughness, you're projecting your own longing, your own unmet needs, onto a blank canvas. You project the need for safety. You project fear of loneliness, fear of making the choice to leave. Clinging to the belief that they can change becomes a tool you use to rationalize staying, so you don't have to pick up your suitcase and walk out that door. This projection shows up as a life force draining loop that runs you dry. Take an honest look back. How many times have you handed out a 10th chance, a 100th chance, to someone who never planned to change their behavior? When they hurt you with careless words, you soothe yourself with aching explanations like, "His childhood was just too painful," or, "Deep down, she's a very fragile person." Feeding this illusion becomes a deeply toxic form of denying reality. You use hope for the future like a numbing agent, so you don't have to face a present filled with indifference and emotional abuse. Holding on to that potential ghost traps you in an extremely low vibration, the frequency of hopeless waiting and disappointments that stretch on month after month, year after year. On a scientific level, your brain falls under the spell of confirmation bias. In a toxic relationship, the other person only has to show one small, accidental act of kindness, a quick checking-in text in the middle of endless coldness, a casual promise during a good mood, and your brain grabs that scrap right away. It blows the moment up to prove the potential you see must be real. You cling to the broken 5% of good moments to erase the 95% of brutal reality you live with every day. This distortion turns you into someone starving for tiny drops of hope while you ignore the truth. The house you're living in has been rotten down to the foundation. If you want to truly rise and pull your frequency out of this swamp, only one solution works, and it feels like a brutal surgery. You have to kill the potential illusion with your own hands. You have to see the person exactly as they show up in the present moment. If they act emotionally absent, reality says they're emotionally absent. If they lie all the time, reality says they lie. Don't add a "but" label to keep fooling yourself for even one more second. Once you stop adding the "but," this release won't feel like freedom with the door swinging open and a bird flying out. It brings grief instead, and the grief runs deep. You'll move through a season of mourning, not mourning someone who died, but mourning an illusion. You'll cry for the ideal father or mother you always longed for, but will never have. You'll grieve the incredible partner you carried in your imagination, even while you know they never existed in real life. That sorrow costs a lot. It rips through you, yet it becomes a sacred fire, the one you need to cleanse your soul of toxic dreams. The most practical practice right now is raw acceptance of reality. Pull back every hope of fixing them and start making choices for your life based on today's data, right now, not on a future blueprint. Ask yourself, do I want to stay connected to the person in front of me with these exact behaviors 10 years from now? If your answer is no, awakening has started knocking. Your energy only starts flowing again when you stop living in a museum of false hope. Real clarity begins when you can look at everything and everyone around you with bare, clean eyes, untouched by the distortions of expectation. Only then will you gather enough courage to step toward the final obstacle. Fifth, let go of the victim identity. Healing and inner growth always begin with the courage to admit your pain. Naming childhood trauma, understanding the cracks your elders accidentally passed down, can feel like a sacred turning point. It helps you soothe the inner child. But Jung saw a dangerous line. Many people, once they touch the wound, decide to pitch a tent and settle down in that devastated land. They confuse compassion for their pain with letting that pain swallow them until it becomes their entire identity. Getting stuck in that pit becomes the core reason you stay trapped at an extremely low vibration, drained of life force, no matter how many psychology theories you can recite. What makes this cage so brutally seductive comes from what psychology calls secondary gains. We need to be sharp enough, even if it stings, to face this truth. Pain, when you display it in the right way, brings hidden privileges. It works like a gentle psychological drug. When you wear the title of victim, the world suddenly treats you more softly. People around you grow more patient, more forgiving of your random anger or your lack of follow-through. More than anything, it hands you the perfect stamp, the most valid reason to explain your stuckness, your delays, and your failures in the present. Your unconscious clings to those benefits. It lulls you into a false sense of safety, so you'd rather hold on to your pain than step into the light and take responsibility for your life. Have you ever noticed that the first story you use to introduce yourself to someone new is your past wounds, the history of a broken heart, an incomplete family, or repeated betrayals becomes your business card in the world? More telling, you start connecting with people almost entirely through bitter experiences. Relationships get built on a cracked foundation where both sides keep trading pity and reinforcing the belief that this world stays full of uncertainty. That picture gets even sharper and more painful when you look at the victimhood culture exploding across American social media. These digital spaces can turn into an arena of wounds where people compete to display personal trauma in exchange for empathy likes and soothing comments. Belonging to a community bound by the same pain brings instant comfort, but deep down, it strips each person of their own power. Chewing on the past over and over turns you into a hostage, trapped in a script that ended a long time ago. From the viewpoint of modern neuroscience, clinging to a victim identity wastes an enormous amount of human potential. Deep research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, has proven a truth filled with hope. Your neural architecture doesn't get poured in concrete by past trauma. The neural pathways carved by fear and sadness can be rerouted. The brain holds an endless capacity to rebuild and rewrite its own story. You aren't nailed to dark memories the way you may believe, so the stuckness you feel today doesn't come from a lack of ability to change. It comes from an unconscious choice to keep the protective shell of safety in place. Jung's philosophy says real elevation requires integration. You need to arrive at a clear, liberating realization. You carry scars, but you are not your scars. Those traumas belong to chapters already written. They can deepen the soul, but they don't get to become the title of your life's novel. You reach a peak of transformation the day you wake up and realize your old tragedies no longer count as the most interesting thing people can say about you. The most powerful practical medicine is a shift in your soul's center of gravity. Instead of pouring your life force into analyzing, dissecting, and defending why you ended up flawed, point that energy toward a brighter hunger. Who do I feel excited to become tomorrow? When you take off the lens of the harmed one, you reclaim your full creative power. Your energy stops flowing backward into the roots of regret. It surges forward, carrying you into the frequency of absolute inner authority. The greatest release comes from returning every experience to its rightful place. Let the wound do the job of a teacher that lights your way, not a dictator that runs your mind. Hold the pen of your life with a completely new posture, because when all is said and done, you're the storyteller, not the victim of the story. Final part. The greatest reward. True elevation. When the pen to rewrite your life finally rests in your own hand, and you've cleared the last remnants of victim consciousness, along with the nice person mask, the savior addiction, the hunger to be understood, and the illusion of other people's future, the constant exhaustion from chasing surface-level healing methods suddenly dissolves. The moment those heavy layers drop into the abyss becomes the moment you officially step into the most sacred territory, individuation. This marks the highest destination, where you move through a deep cleansing and become the most whole, original, and radiant version of who you were meant to be. The first, deepest reward that blooms from this letting go is absolute freedom. For years, your mind lived inside an invisible prison you built from society's expectations. Now the chains break. You no longer shrink under the fear of being rejected or disliked. You no longer drain your life force in hopeless attempts to change or save someone who doesn't want to rise. The craving for the world to understand every beat of your heart grows quiet, making room for a solid self-respect, steady as a cliff face. Jim Carrey's life arc, one of the greatest and highest-paid comedic actors in Hollywood history, captures this freedom in full. He once held every luxurious dream people chase: blinding fame, massive wealth, and the wild praise of millions around the world. Yet beneath the laughter he gave the public, he wrestled in the dark with severe depression. When the pain reached the peak of awakening, he made a shocking choice. He turned his back on the spotlight, refused blockbuster projects, and returned to a painting studio, choosing quiet companionship with trays of color. In a now classic red carpet interview at a Harper's Bazaar event, a place where hundreds of people work hard to polish a glamorous existence, Jim Carrey walked on calmly and declared a strange truth. He said he doesn't exist, that no Jim Carrey stands there at all, that everything is just bundles of energy dancing together. Someone might frown and call him insane, but he had actually touched absolute freedom. He let his famous identity die, dropped the fear of judgment, and merged into a larger unity with the universe. When this freedom takes root deep in your soul, the inner tug-of-war with reality finally ends, and at the exact moment your inner world reaches complete stillness, a second miracle knocks on your door: synchronicity. Analytical thinking keeps drilling one belief into us. Nothing happens unless you calculate it, plan it, and force it into place. Jung discovered something far more mysterious. When the mind stops judging, the universe starts speaking to you directly through meaningful, non-linear coincidences. Jung experienced this firsthand during a therapy session that seemed stuck. His female patient stayed trapped in extreme logic and rigid rationality, slamming every door that could lead into the unconscious. One afternoon, she told Jung about a dream from the night before, where someone gave her a piece of jewelry shaped like a golden scarab beetle. The second she finished, Jung heard a soft tapping at the window behind him. He turned, opened it, and actually caught a beetle with a beautiful green-gold shimmer. That impossible coincidence, beyond ordinary logic, broke down her solid wall of rationality and opened a powerful current of healing. When you stop trying to control every turn in the story, life starts arranging itself. The right people, opportunities, and messages find you at the exact moment you're ready to receive them. In the end, the quietest and greatest reward of this transformation is effortless energy. You realize a freeing truth. You don't need to struggle to raise your frequency anymore. Like a river cleared of trash, mud, and boulders blocking the way, the water starts flowing on its own, clean and pure. Your highest frequency doesn't come from a costume you put on for show. It's your original nature rising up once every shackle breaks. You shine without needing to prove anything. Actor Keanu Reeves embodies that vast, pure current of energy in a way you can feel. Fate hit him with tragedies that could tear a person apart. His closest friend died from a drug overdose. His baby daughter was born prematurely and left the world before she could even cry her first cry. And soon after, the woman he loved most died in a devastating car accident. With that many abysses of despair, he could have curled up inside resentment or lived as a bitter victim of life. Instead of running, Keanu let the pain in and dissolved it all the way down into his being. He chose a quiet, simple life that feels almost unbelievable inside a Hollywood soaked in vanity. The image of a superstar giving up his seat on a noisy subway, eating a sandwich alone on a park bench, or donating millions of dollars to children's hospitals while refusing to attach his name has become a symbol of lasting peace. He doesn't try to sound like a spiritual master, and he doesn't need to preach positivity. Keanu simply shows up, living his life in silence, with a heart purified by fire. When you strip away those 5 layers of psychological weight, a bright, steady horizon opens in front of you. The strain of forcing yourself disappears. The confused tears in the middle of the night disappear. You stand there, whole, breathing in a new kind of life force, clean and fresh. Storms will still pass through your life, but now you've grown roots deep into the Mother Earth. You can smile and meet everything with your soul's original vibration, free, elevated, and fully alive. The journey of truly stripping away these 5 psychological burdens won't be easy. A shaky, disorienting feeling, like you're losing yourself, will stay close. Jung called this the void, an uncertain, frightening in-between space where the old ego has died and the new self hasn't risen yet. Please hold your faith. Don't fear the loneliness that swells when you stop explaining yourself. Don't panic at the emptiness when you give up the privilege of saving other people's lives. Let the old, worn-out ego decay. Let it turn into soft, fertile soil that can nourish the seed of your truest self. Because in the end, Vibrate Higher isn't some glowing destination drenched in spotlight the way people promise. It's a deep calm, the kind you feel when you can stand on your own 2 feet, brave enough to face and hold both your light and your shadow. I hope you have the courage to let go and truly rise. Out of the 5 things we just unpacked, which one feels like the anchor holding you down the hardest? Share your story in the comments, because the moment you dare to name the truth, your liberation has already begun. If this video gave you something to lean on, hit like, share it with anyone who feels unsteady, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again in the next videos, so we can keep going all the way to the heart of healing and build a whole integrated self together.